Men who have been violated by women. What's your story? Story 1. Friend's mother. She was 50 or something. We were young men. She violated at least 4 of us. This was the cool house where you could drink, hang out, etc. For my part, she once pointed a weapon, which I assumed was loaded, at me and another kid who told us to wash our dishes. Partway through, she reached into my pants. Her husband actually walked into the room during this, and when I looked at him, he said, "Don't look at me, she's got the weapon." I know other friends got a lot worse than I did. She also violated the girl, who would later be my first adult partner. Her daughter's boyfriend lived with them for a year, and I'm pretty sure he got the worst of it. When I was in my early 20s, she died of a heart attack, and that guy brought a six-pack to my house to tell me. Only time I've toasted to someone's death. When I finally understood that I was actually being violated, she'd passed away, so I never got the chance to report it. Besides, boys don't get violated, right? And no one wanted the crap that would come of it. They were a messed up family. Her husband later ended her boyfriend by running him over. I'm just glad I never got tempted by those cool houses. They might look like the spot to be, but trust me, it's not cool inside. Story 2. When I was a private in the army, a female friend in my unit became somewhat obsessive over me to the point of being a stalker after I rejected her advances. We had faulty locks on our barracks doors that could be opened with a pair of pliers. She would casually break into my room and wait for me, so we could talk about us. She would normally leave if I told her to, so I didn't think much of it. One night I came home completely wasted, passed out, and woke up in the middle of the night to her giving me a sloppy. I didn't even know how she got in my room. When I realized what was happening, she attempted to go further. I pushed her off and told her to leave. My roommate, friends, NCOs, etc. just thought it was hilarious. It didn't really bother me, but I definitely look back and see that it was wrong. This incident happened when I was stationed in South Korea back in 2006, when I was still young. I was also engaged at the time. This vast majority of the guys in my platoon were not getting any action, so they thought I was lucky. I got a lot of comments like, "You should have told her to come to my room if you didn't want her." My squad leader's stance was, "If you're not in jail, it's not my concern." My first-line supervisor started referring to me as Romeo. I said it didn't really bother me, but looking back, I realized that I slept on my friend's floor for 3 weeks until my door was fixed, in an effort to avoid her unwanted late-night visits. That being said, I wasn't ever in any actual physical danger, and I think that's why most people chalked it up as not being that big of a deal. Story 3. I don't know if it counts as a violation because I probably could have avoided it if I'd just been smarter, told someone, or stuck up for myself better. When I was a kid, my sister, who was around 7 years older, and I used to share a bed. One night I think my hand grazed against her or something as I was turning, and the next day she threatened to tell my parents that I had touched her unless I did exactly as she said. I was scared and didn't want my parents, who were going through a contentious divorce, to be mad at me, so I did what she said. All I knew was that it made me feel funny. It continued for a couple of weeks, and if I remember incorrectly, it happened sporadically once or twice a year or 2 later. I never told anyone. Growing up, I was really confused about how I felt about my sister. It wasn't until 3 years ago, my sophomore year of college, that the full realization of what she had done to me hit me. I don't know why it took until then to realize it, honestly, but I think one day I just woke up and realized that what had happened to me actually happened. I couldn't explain it to you if I tried, but suddenly, I understood a little more about what happened, and I was able to verbalize it for the first time and put it into words. I told a friend of mine at the time, who comforted me and helped me a lot at the time by just being there to listen to me and empathize with me. She was always around to listen as I processed these feelings, emotions, and realizations years later. That year, my sister had her wedding. I was one of her fiancé's groomsmen. I couldn't choose not to attend the wedding, and I couldn't turn the groomsman offer down because it would make my family look bad if I did. In part Indian American and in Indian culture, you sometimes have to do things because it makes the family look bad if you don't. My mom and dad asked me not to turn down my future brother-in-law's request to be one of his groomsmen, and they really wanted me to be at the wedding. So I agreed. At the wedding, the day of the reception, Indian weddings are typically days long, as the brother of the bride, I was expected to give a speech extolling the virtues of my sister and her new husband. Again, I couldn't refuse. It would make the family look bad. I stood up in a room of hundreds of people. I put a smile on my face and appraised the girl who had, unbeknownst to me until a few months prior to that year, effectively been one of the reasons I struggled with my emotions, mental health, and identity for so long. I was only able to make it through the wedding because the bartenders at each event knew something was wrong. They made sure to have a drink in my hand at all times. I just focused on having as much of a good time as possible, and danced and drank away my problems. One of the days I was there, my cousin also got buzzed and told me that she had also been violated by a grandfather, and she felt like she could tell me because I had told her about what my sister did to me a few weeks prior. There's an apocryphal story I once heard about a man who falls down a hole and starts calling for help. His friend hears his calls, peers down the hole, and quickly jumps in too. The first man is bewildered and says, "Why did you do that? Now we're both stuck down here." The friend replies, "I know, but I've been down here before and I know the way out." At that moment, when my cousin was crying on my shoulder and we were looking out over the balcony, I wished I could be the friend for her who could show her the way out of the hole we had both found ourselves in. At one point during the wedding, when we were all getting ready for the day's ceremonies, my mother was spending some time with me, fixing my hair or something because she hadn't seen me in a few months, and my sister started hyperventilating and crying, saying that my mother prefers me to her because my name goes to an Ivy, and that Even during my wedding, my mother pays more attention to my name than she does to my sister. I comforted her, telling her that my mom would like her more than she likes me because my sister is a doctor, I'm not, and my family strongly prefers doctors. Internally, I was just shocked, and I left the room shortly afterward. I then got angry at myself for comforting the person whom I should hate with every fiber of my being. When friends talk about when we each had our first kiss or when we lost our V-cards, I can say that I lost it in college, but I realized once during one of those conversations that my first kiss was back then with my sister, and it wasn't consensual. So the first kiss I tell people about when they ask is actually my second kiss. Small things like this sometimes make me realize how strange my upbringing was. I try not to talk to my sister. My mother noticed this and lamented that my sister and I aren't as close as we used to be and how she wants us to be there for each other and support each other. It took all my willpower not to cry. I just told her I didn't like my sister. She kept pressing the issue, and over the next few months, she would periodically ask me why I didn't like my sister and why we couldn't just get along, until one day I broke down and finally told her what happened. Her first response was to ask me specific questions about what happened, as if she didn't believe me. It took me a few minutes before I realized that she, in fact, didn't. By the time I managed to convince her that it did happen and that I wasn't making it up, she then said that it had been so many years already. Why couldn't I just forget about it and patch things up with my sister? Sometimes I think about all of these things and feel sad, because I often think that I would have been a better off and more well-adjusted person if my sister hadn't done what she did to me. I think I would be happier than I currently am. I think I would have perhaps flourished more than I have so far, but I won't ever know, because I can't go back in time and see what I could have been like without my sister doing what she did to me. I wish I could. Story 4. Not me, but my friend got violated in my apartment about a year ago. Myself, my friend, and a girl had come back from a party, and all three of us were really hammered. Me and the girl were going to fool around in my room, but my friend just crashed on my couch. Now the girl had asked me if I was straight a couple times through the night, which was weird, but I was frisky and buzzed and I didn't care and ignored this weird red flag. So we've been making out on my bed for literally 2 minutes and she just got really excited and wanted it fast. But I wasn't excited yet, so it wasn't working out. She gets up, freaks out, and starts calling me gay. She accuses me of being gay for not getting excited and for my mannerisms throughout the night. I'm just like, you're insane. And she storms out of my room. I promptly went to sleep, not really caring or thinking about anything. In the morning, I'm talking to my friend after we were both up, and he tells me that he woke up to this girl with her hands down there. He said he froze up and just pretended to roll over facing the couch, and she got up and left my apartment. He's obviously upset about it, and I wasn't thrilled about the encounter with her myself. He confronts her and tells multiple people the story, trying to out her for what she did. She lies and says they hooked up consensually. 90% of her friend group told her side and made fun of him, and it really messed him up. He's doing better now, though. 90% of their friend group didn't believe them? That's just messed up. And dude, there are more messed up stories of men going through crazy things in my channel, so hit the like button and subscribe for more. Story 5. I was a kid. My parents had called a family friend to see if their daughter could watch me for the night. Their daughter couldn't because she had plans. They had decided that one of her friends would be a suitable replacement. Everything was fine when she arrived at her house. My mom said it was okay if we left and got ice cream at some point if we wanted to. I really regret pushing for that to happen. Later on, after my parents left, about an hour or two later, me and the babysitter went out and got ice cream. In our town, we had a reservoir, and the McDonald's we were just heading towards was close to said reservoir. I don't really think much of it. Her Jeep was cool, and I thought maybe she just wanted to take the longer route. She pulled off into one of the more secluded areas there. She asked if her purse was in the back seat and if I could search for it back there. I obliged. That's when she pushed me into the back seat. I thought that was weird because it was decently rough. She climbs into the back seat, putting her weight on my chest and taking my arm. And she grabbed handcuffs out of the purse that was on the floorboard. She cuffed my arm on the handle of the door. I remember it being so tight around my wrist that it burned when I tried to wiggle out of it. She started to do those things to me. I didn't even know why. I kept saying no and crying and screaming for help. It felt like it lasted forever. She was finally done and she took the cuffs off and threatened me that if I ever told anyone about the favor she did for me, she would say I violated her. She drove back to my house and told me to take a shower before my parents got home. That was 4 nights before I tried to end everything for the first time. I never came out with it. I didn't think boys could get violated by girls. I felt more comfortable speaking about it when I was a little older and started to see my counselor. However, my parents didn't believe it happened when we had family counseling. No one in my family took me seriously. Sometimes, my mom asks me questions about it now that I'm 22. However, being intimate is a little difficult now. Sometimes if I overthink it, I get a really bad panic attack. If someone is reading this, don't do what I did. Don't wait to tell someone. Tell someone, please. Story 6. I had a brutal ex-girlfriend who would get blackout buzzed and threaten to end herself if I didn't get frisky with her. It was quite common for her to be on top and punch or slap me for having my eyes closed, waiting for it to be over and trying to belittle me for not being a man. She was mistreated as a child and both her parents are substance dependent, so I assume it was some kind of power thing. It happened 5 or 6 times before I properly resisted and threw her off of me onto the floor. She left for some other guy's house and cried about domestic maltreatment. She had keys to my apartment and they were in the hallway banging on my door, held close by the chain, yelling for all to hear about the piece of crap I was. I was too scared to call the cops. The next morning, she came back apologetic, confessing to having slept with all 3 of these guys the next morning. I played along long enough for her to go to the bathroom. I took my keys out of her purse, suggested we go for breakfast, and left through the kitchen door. I've got a great intimate life with a loving partner now, but I still cry when I sing the wreck of the Edmund Fitzgerald or reminisce about my time in Thunder Bay. Story 7. Mom would guilt me into laying in bed with her at night. She would tell me she didn't want me to be in this planet anymore and would be leaving soon. She used to make me big spoon and rub up against me. I did that from childhood well into my teenage years. The last time it happened, I was still young. She was hammered, rolled over, and grabbed me down there. I shoved her off. She got angry and didn't talk to me the rest of the night. I don't really see her much anymore. Man, I'm just glad this dude is fine now, I hope. Story 8. Babysitter in the late 90s. She was mid-20s. I was a young kid. She made all the kids always play hide and seek, and she would make me count with her and force me to do things to her while coaxing me to say dirty things. This happened for about 2 months, 2 to 3 times a week. I blame her for taking something away from me that I will never get a choice for. This is the first time I have ever talked about this. I've realized that I think the reason I have an extremely high intimacy drive and weird naughty fixations is because I have her to blame for this. It will live with me for the rest of my life. This is the first time I have ever told anyone or put this anywhere. I recently told my wife about it. One morning I woke her up and just told her everything. I broke down, cried so hard, and told her everything. I don't know how she's taking to it, but goddamn, it feels great to get that off my chest. I told her that I've been tempted to end myself with how it's been eating at me. I've been to counseling, but my body stops me from bringing it up. It's easier to tell others on forums because it's anonymous. I know I should seek help, but it took 7 years for my wife to convince me to finally see a therapist due to my PTSD from my time in Afghanistan. All my friends and family know I'm messed up in the head, and the first time I explained what I did and saw over there, I broke down and cried like a baby for about 20 minutes. I tried to portray myself as a manly man and a hardworking man, but with what happened to me at a younger age and what happened overseas, I'm so mentally distraught. It's crazy. I hold it in to be strong for my wife and kids. I haven't seen them in about 6 months because I was trying to stop sharing so much. This might take another 7 years, but I might get to the point of saying it out loud. Story 9. It didn't feel right sending a girl home late at night, so I let her stay with me in my hotel room. I wasn't planning for her to stay that night and didn't really consider doing the dirty with her. Next morning, I thought I was dreaming of getting intimate. Then started wondering why it felt good, and then I fully woke up just as I finished and realized it did happen and I wasn't wearing rubber. I got tested and she was on her period, so she was unlikely to get pregnant. I thought I dodged some bullets and it was just an unexpected incident or something. I thought I was with a new partner and we were swapping odd physical encounters or something, and I brought that up and she was like, you were violated. Which was odd since until that moment I didn't seriously think of it that way. I don't know. I used to associate being violated with a violent or traumatic event, and for me, it wasn't. But it would be a completely different story if I caught something or she got pregnant. And if I were fully awake and wanted to end it, I could have easily lifted her off me. But it really made me conscious of consent. Not that I wasn't before, but I really was after. Story 10. It wasn't traumatic in the traditional sense, but it's the reason that now I feel uncomfortable drinking a lot with people I don't know. Friend T just broke up with her boyfriend, and my friend K and I went to get her belongings and went to K's cousin's pair apartment for the night. T was pretty distraught over the whole thing. So Kay and I went to Walmart to get some booze, movies, and candy to have a chill night. We get home and we're all relaxing and having fun, but I get tired after drinking heavily for a while, so I went into one of the spare bedrooms and fell into a very buzzed sleep. Next thing I know, I'm being caressed and given a sloppy by T. I was trying to tell her to stop, but she just shushed me and got on top with no protection. It was the most uninteresting and disgusting incident I've had when looking back on it. That might just be my reaction to being taken advantage of in hindsight. Kay was fast asleep on the couch, if I remember correctly. A few months ago, she actually messaged me to apologize for doing it. She said she did it because her ex-boyfriend's stepbrother had violated her, which led to the breakup, so to feel more in control of herself in her private life, she did it to me. It's pretty messed up, and I didn't forgive her, so now she's blocked me on almost everything. I never told Kay what happened that night, and I doubt T told Kay, I assume. The next day, I just pretended it never happened and got T to move in with her sister. Kay and T ended up dating a few months later, and T was very cruel towards Kay and cut our friendship off. It went on for about 2 years, and then T tried to say my loving friend Kay was the cruel one. You can tell what kind of woman T is at this point. It wasn't until a few months later when Kay passed away that T started trying to come back into Kay and my mutual friends' lives again. She did that whole thing where she lied about how great the relationship was, how much she loved Kay, and how she and her were inseparable. I think it was just her guilt trying to cover up her relationship maltreatment, but we all know how she treated Kay. Up until she blocked me, she still believed that Kay visited her in her dreams and threw dragonflies. Kay was my best friend, so it hurts and enrages me that T continues to talk about Kay like this. I hope you enjoyed the video, and if you made it this far, I'm sure you'll also enjoy. When have you experienced sexism as a man? Story 4 is just unbelievable. See you in that video.